Hey, it's Doki. Wait, this isn't a Twitch stream. What? What's going on? I don't. I don't know. Is this a YouTube video? I don't know what those are like anymore. Ugh. Anyway, recently I discovered a service that is available called Custom Game Cases. And I've been ordering them in droves, essentially. I've made 3 big orders with them so far, and I'd just like to give a shout out to Jeremy, the owner or founder of CustomGameCases.com, and Jeremy's been absolutely wonderful in providing some of these cases for me, as well as, giving me any information and, just helping me out with anything I may have needed for these cases. So without further ado, I've got a whole bunch of game cases sitting here right next to me. There's even some back there. I just brought a bunch of them out. And I want to go ahead and review them with you, so that you can see before purchasing what you are getting. Because honestly, in my own opinion, I was blown away by the quality of these. They're fantastic. So first off, we're going to go ahead and look at the original Game Boy Pokemon Red. A lot of the cases that I got, admittedly, were Pokemon games. And surprisingly, with the Pokemon games, I've noticed that you can even get the Japanese versions of them as well. I have the Japanese Pokemon games, Red, Blue, Yellow, Green, Silver, Gold, and Crystal. I have those ones. I don't have the advanced games yet, but I will. But you can buy them. You can buy them, and each of these labels, you'll notice, each of these labels are based off of the original game boxes for the games, both front and back. So they look exactly like you would get them out of the store in the original boxes. They're fantastic. And they've even customized the spine so that they look really, really nice on a bookshelf, which is exactly what I did with mine. I drove like 3 or 4 hours to IKEA to pick up a bookshelf specifically for these games, for these game cartridges. So I'm not going to go through both of the Japanese ones. It's the same case. It's just different label. So if I open it up, you'll notice and I'm just going to say it once here because I did another take of this video before, and I said it on every single game, and I don't think I need to. Each of these game cases that they have for each different console that I'm about to review have specifically molded cases to fit the game that you're putting in here. So, like in this case, the Game Boy cartridge fits in there perfectly. You can shake it, you can flail it about, it's not going anywhere. Like, it's not even loose, it's in there. They're held in by, like, 4 clips. One of the clips is a little bit loose, but that's not bad. They're held in there by 4 clips, and it's tight. Like, it's not going anywhere. There's a spot for your manual, if you still have it. I wish I'd kept mine, but, of course I can't tell the future. I didn't know I was going to buy these when I was a kid and had Pokemon Red. And, like I said, they just look fantastic on your shelf. They're great. It's essentially the same thing with Game Boy Color. Obviously, like I said, I got both the Japanese and the English version. It's essentially the same exact case. They just fit, Game Boy Color cartridges as well because they're essentially like the same shape. So, same thing. Works great. The only wonky one for Game Boy Color that I own is Pokemon Pinball, because Pokemon Pinball it's not a normal size game. And look at this case before I open it. Look how big this is. Although that's not shut correctly. It's such a wonky case because of how big it is. But yeah, that's just a thick case. But like I said, the cover, front and back, it's exactly like the box, the cardboard box that you get it in. The reason this one is so big specifically is because Pokemon Pinball was kind of a big game anyway, because it required a AAA battery, so it kind of sticks out a bit. I just thought you might want to see that because it is a bit of a weird one. It is a bit of a different one. So I wanted to kind of show it so that you knew where you were getting into. If you did need the case for this game, if you did need it, you know what you're getting into. That is a big, like a thick case. It's a thickum. Moving on. Let's go to the Game Boy Advance games. You would think that this had... I think Game Boy Advance is probably the only one that I maybe have an issue with. I don't know. Because it's the same molding as the Game Boy and Game Boy Color ones. But at the same time, I don't really, because it still fits the way that they designed this specific mold. It fits in one of like the lower half spots, or probably even up here. But I put it in the lower half, and it doesn't go anywhere. So like it's in there securely. I think the OCD part of myself is just like thought that there was going to be like a single spot for... By the way, you can't fit 2 games there. I tried. But like I just thought there was going to be just like a form-fitting Game Boy Advance game. But I'm not really disappointed. I mean, it still fits, it still works. It does what it needs to do. It's not going anywhere. But I just wanted to show that the Game Boy Advance games are the same as the Game Boy and Game Boy Color ones. They just work the same way. It's just half of the slot. Moving on. So now that we're done with the Game Boy Color, and the Game Boy Advance games. I know it's not such a fancy review, but let's go on and move on to another handheld. The Sega Game Gear. Believe it or not, I do own a Sega Game Gear and some games. It's just, in this case, it's the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 that I own. I don't have any manuals, but I do have the game. So, again, form-fitting, fits perfect. It's not going to move. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to shake. Another spot for manual here. And I'm telling you, like, I want to say this because I don't know what it is about this game, but like the plastic, the clear plastic on the outside here that goes above the label, gave me some crazy nostalgia, because the Sega games, specifically the Sega Genesis games, which I'll get into next, had cases exactly like this, and they had that same plastic. And just when I got this in the box, it's just when I picked it up and I felt that plastic holding the game in my hands, it legitimately gave me nostalgia of like when I first owned this game, like when we first bought it off the shelf. Obviously not Sonic 2, because Sonic 2 came with the Game Gear, but in this case, Street Fighter 2 for Genesis has that same plastic on the box. It legitimately feels like a brand new, like, Genesis game. Like, we just bought this from the store. This is the game that me and my friend Daniel would play all the time. All the time. We'd play some Street Fighter all the time. I think my dad and my neighbor played it maybe a little, but they were more concerned with Blades of Steel. But these Genesis cases, they legit feel like the real thing. Like, it feels like a recreation of the original cases that came with these games, and I am legit impressed. Like, down to the plastic. It's unreal. One of the game consoles that I don't own, that they did send one for, thankfully, is the 32X. Same deal. It's the same type of case. It even has that same plastic, just like all the other Sega games do. I don't own a 32X or any games for it, but it looks like it has a similar cart to, maybe a little bit bigger cart to how the Genesis is. But you can see it's molded to that game size. It will fit not nice and snug, and of course all of the cases are based after the original game boxes, which I love that. I've never actually thought about that until I picked those cases up. I never thought about that plastic. I'm like, oh man, that is what a new game case felt like, and man, that brought back some memories. Another one I never owned, but they were good enough to send me, is the Virtual Boy. In this case, Wario Land. I've played this game on the Virtual Boy when the Virtual Boy was new, when I was a kid, in the middle of a Best Buy, I think. And obviously, Virtual Boy, all their games were just black and red. Absolute horrible on the eyes. But the case is very much a red. It's very much in a DS-style case. But specifically molded to the Virtual Boy games. And of course, you can see their custom game cases logo right here. Which is on all of their cases, or at least most of them. If it's not on all of them, it'll be on the spine at least. And the last one that I don't have a game to, or a console, surprisingly, is the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System. So I decided to get Super Mario 3, because if I ever owned an NES, this would probably be the game that I get. Of course, I don't remember what the box looked like. We did have this growing up, but I'm sure that is what the box looked like. I do remember it was yellow, for sure. It's specifically molded to the game. As you can see, it's very, very big, as an NES cartridge would be. I would assume the top goes up here, the bottom of it goes down here, because the bottom was always a little bit thinner than the top was. And it just holds onto it snugly. Spot for a manual. And I'm sure it fits perfectly fine. I just have no way of testing that. But thank you, Jeremy, for sending those specifically those three, the Virtual Boy, NES, and 32X cases over. Let's go ahead and go back to the cases that I do own. We're going to start with the Super Nintendo. For Super Mario World. It's the same case, similar to the NES case, only it fits a Super Nintendo game. So you can see the molding is different on it. CustomGameCases.com logo over here instead of the logo on the manual side. But it fits nice. It's not gonna go anywhere, just like the rest of them. I will say though, if you do get an NES one or a Super NES one, please note these tabs over here are longer than the ones over there. So when you're putting it in, make sure you're sliding it in like that and then dropping it down. Then it will hold in there easily and snugly, and it won't go anywhere. If you try and force it with those tabs at the top, it's not going to really go in very well. But with all of these cases, like, they look fantastic on a bookshelf because all of the spines are custom made to look good on a bookshelf. The way that they did these are fantastic. It makes it so easy and so convenient to find what you're looking for and put on away nicely on a bookshelf. Speaking of which, Nintendo 64. I have a lot of Nintendo 64 games. And the problem with Nintendo 64 games is that if you have a lot of Nintendo 64 games, they're likely sitting on your shelf like this. Or even on its side. You see the problem? If you have a bunch of these Nintendo 64 games, there's not really much of a way to identify them if they're just sitting loose on a shelf. Unless you look at the front. So you're just sifting through games. That is another reason I love these games. These game cases. They're so easy to use. And with the N64 ones, by the way, there's even a slot for a memory card up here. Which I believe... Did N64 have... No, I don't think N64... I think they came in cardboard cases too, if I'm mistaken. But, yeah, I mean, there's a memory card slot up there if you have a bunch of memory cards. Spot for the manual. Very similar to the Super Nintendo and the NES cases. It's the same type of plastic. But if you have these on a bookshelf and they're not sitting around loose, you can see what game you're looking for. They've made it easy. There's an N64 game. There's the game you're grabbing. Boom. Easy. So easy. I love it. I love that so much because I have a lot of N64 games and now it's easy to find them. I love that. And finally, we'll go into the Nintendo DS. So actually, right here I have a legitimate, authentic Nintendo DS case. So this one is not made by them for New Super Mario Brothers for the Nintendo DS. So this is an original. Then I have the custom game cases version of Brain Age. Tell me if you can see a difference. There's a spot for the game. There's a spot for a Game Boy Advance game. There is the manual spot. Like it's almost identical. It's impressive. It's so identical. It's impressive. Like it really is. The only thing I will say, because I want to be thorough with this review. The only thing I will say about these cases is that if you have a game like Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, Soul Silver, Heart Gold that has like a metallic or like a holographic thing to it, they don't have the ability of doing that yet. They're working on it, but it requires like special types of printing that they're not able to do as of yet. They're working on it. They're also working on 3DS cases, as far as I'm aware. So they can't do those yet, but they're working on it. But their DS cases, if you don't need it, if your case doesn't have anything special and it's just a regular like printed label with no like metallic, holographic sorts of things, flawless. Like they're identical. Just get one of these. They're great. Like I bought a ton of them. Well, actually, no. I didn't buy a ton of these specifically. I bought a couple of these because I wasn't missing many. But I bought a ton of N64 and Game Boy ones for sure. But I will say, since that's the end of all of the games, I will say that Jeremy from Custom Game Cases was an absolute pleasure to work with. If you have any games that are just sitting around loose, sitting around in like those old, like plastic, like Game Boy clear shells, and you want to display things like nicely and display them in a way to where you can just grab a case you're looking for to play a retro game, there's no better option. There legitimately is no better option. Just go to customgamecases.com, order yourself some cases, and just, throw them on a bookshelf. They look fantastic. I can't say anything better about them. Like they're perfect. Like I couldn't be happier with mine. But yeah, if I can think of anything else, I'll throw it in the video before I send it up to YouTube. But yeah, go to customgamecases.com, get yourself some cases, and yeah, that's all I got for you. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'm sorry I'm so awkward. I haven't made a YouTube video in forever, so sorry about that. And I'll see you when I see you. Later.